Hey everyone, and welcome to Mini Scroll, the daily internet culture podcast bringing you the biggest stories from social media, the creator economy, and the digital space every Monday through Thursday, and sometimes Fridays. My name is Annabelle, and I'm your Wednesday Mini Tech Scroll host, and also the deputy editor of the youth digital media brand Centennial World. Welcome back to another week of Mini Tech Scroll, everyone. I really don't have too much to say at the top of this week's episode, or really any updates, so let's just get right into the stories. But before that, quick reminder, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe because we are so close to 10K on YouTube. Okay, now let's get into it. To start off this week, I have some Reddit news, and that is that Reddit is reportedly in talks to consider using Sam Altman's iris scanning orb tool. That sounds crazy, but let me break it down for you guys. Before we fully get into it though, I do want to say that I'm always stalking the Reddit threads and seeing where you guys are recommending Infinite Scroll and Mini Scroll. And I know I've said it before, but I will say it again, it is all so much appreciated. But anyway, with this iris scanning orb tool that we are talking about, Lauren did cover this when I was away in a Mini Tech Scroll episode. I would honestly recommend going back to listen to it because it was both informative and quite funny. Lauren's delivery was very passionate. But for those of you who may have not caught the episode, Sam Altman has a company called World, and the main product is Orb, which is essentially a device that scans a person's irises to generate a unique ID, and then that is stored. So it's ultimately a way that a person can prove that they are a real human and not AI. But to make things even weirder / more confusing, when World ID users scan their irises by one of the company's orbs, they actually get free World coins, which is a cryptocurrency. The original incentive behind this was to get people to actually scan their irises, but it was also built with the intention of creating an AI-funded universal basic income, which is honestly a really interesting concept. But as Reed Albergotti points out for Semaphore, quote, "These days, it's not the crypto component that makes WorldCoin a potentially important part of the AI industry. It's the technology that can verify whether someone is a unique individual." Having said that though, as Lauren so rightly pointed out in the episode where she covered all of this feels very hypocritical / ironic coming from Sam Altman, given that he is really driving the AI era as the CEO of OpenAI. So it kind of just seems like he is finding a solution to a problem that he created. Okay, so now that we've got that covered, Reddit is reportedly considering incorporating World ID into the platform. So continuing on from the Semaphore article, quote, "World ID could soon become a way for Reddit users to verify that they are unique individuals while remaining anonymous on the platform." So this kind of verification is obviously something that is becoming more and more important online, especially as we are entering this unknown AI era. But this does seem to be a specific concern to Reddit. Firstly, because the platform is so anonymous, it makes it harder to tell the difference between AI, bots, and people. But second, it is because of everything that has gone down between Reddit and the University of Zurich over the past few months. For a brief refresher, we did cover this on a previous Mini Tech Scroll episode as well, but a team of researchers from the University of Zurich reportedly used AI bots on the r/ChangeMyView subreddit to test whether these bots could actually change people's minds. These bots ended up making thousands of comments without being disclosed to the Reddit users. This was obviously a huge privacy breach and was completely unethical, as neither the Reddit users or mods could consent to being involved in this study. As the Semaphore article continues, quote, "As a result, there's new urgency to find ways to verify some information about people online while also providing privacy and anonymity that has become a cherished characteristic of the web, and one that is especially cherished on Reddit." So whether World ID should be that verification tool of choice is another question. At the end of the day, I do think people will always be hesitant to verify accounts and hand over biometric data. And I don't think it helps that Sam Altman is associated with the company, But one thing is for sure, I do think that verification is important, especially as AI agents multiply and spread across the internet. My next story is actually Australia based. I feel like we get a fair amount of comments on Lauren's mini scroll episodes, particularly to talk about Australian influences and trends. So I am leaning into that request as well. I'm actually shocked though that I haven't brought this up in Mini Tech Scroll yet, but I wanted to quickly share an update on the Australian government's plan to ban, quote unquote, social media for under 16-year-olds. For those of you who aren't Australian or who haven't heard about this so-called ban, I will quickly explain. So last year, legislation passed through Australian Parliament that would set a minimum age for social media, and this included platforms like Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and X. There was a lot of conversation around this legislation, but to boil it down, some people thought it was a great idea and a necessary step to protect youth mental health. Meanwhile, others felt like it was taking away an important socialization and community building tool from young people, and obviously there were questions about infringing on freedom. There have also been a lot of concern and questioning about whether this is even technologically possible to ban under 16-year-olds. I will say though, the government doesn't necessarily view this as a blanket ban because under 16-year-olds won't necessarily be fined or penalised for being on social media, but rather as a means to encourage young people to get on social media later by raising the minimum age. But from when it passed, which was the end of last year, social media platforms have been given 12 months to roll out systems that would essentially be able to enforce the age restriction. Here in Australia, their updates and analysis of this move by the government has been continuously debated, as you could imagine. So obviously I can't cover everything to do with this story, but one update of note is that Julie Inman-Grant, who is Australia's e-Safety Commissioner, which is Australia's independent regulator for online safety, is pushing to add YouTube to the ban. So originally YouTube was exempt from the ban, but it is looking like that might change, and this push is coming from recent research that found that many young people have come across harmful content on YouTube. So this is coming from a report that was advice to the Minister for Communications from the e-Safety Commissioner. Quote, among a subset of children who have ever seen or heard potentially harmful content online, 37% reported their most recent or impactful experience with this content occurred on YouTube. In a recent address, Julie Inman-Grant also commented on how dangerous the algorithms are on the platform, where they can drive, quote, users down rabbit holes that they are powerless to fight against, which I feel like is kind of true. Anyway, YouTube has since published a statement responding to this announcement/recommendation. The statement started by noting how frequently YouTube is used in classrooms before arguing that, quote, this recommendation is in direct contradiction to the government's decision to exempt YouTube from the ban. The government's own research confirmed there was a broad agreement that YouTube is suitable for younger users. YouTube is not a social media platform. It is a video streaming platform with a library of free, high-quality content. And TV screens are increasingly the most popular place to watch. Obviously, if YouTube was included in the ban, this would be a huge move because YouTube definitely has so many educational uses. Like, I remember when I was in high school, I would sometimes search up how to answer math questions and I found that really useful. But I will say though, I think if this was included in the ban, under 16s would probably still be able to watch content because you don't need an account to watch videos on YouTube. But who really knows how this ban is going to be instituted at this stage? On the flip side though, there is definitely something to be said about the power of YouTube algorithms and how you can just easily fall down rabbit holes. And this is definitely a problem with the rise of the manosphere, as we have mentioned time and time again on this podcast. And algorithms are definitely becoming more influential on YouTube, at least for me personally. I feel like I often forget to subscribe to my favorite creators because I am just waiting for them to come up on my recommended. On top of this, the fact that Shorts is becoming more prominent is another algorithm-driven way to consume content. At the end of the day, though, when it comes to the social media quote-unquote ban, there are still a lot of questions around the logistics and, like I said earlier, whether it's actually feasible. I did think, though, that this would be an especially interesting story to include alongside the World ID one because it kind of shows another use for verification technology in that it would be able to potentially verify ages. I've seen commentary from various Australian media talking about possible tools that could be used to identify ages once this quote-unquote ban comes to fruition. And this is ranging from facial recognition to hand movement recognition. But there is definitely a lot of unanswered questions about how this will be instituted, like I said, even though there are ongoing trials. But yeah, I just thought that this would be an interesting story to include. Okay, my last story for today is that BeReal is trying to make a comeback. So I put this story in today's episode for personal reasons that were funny to me, because one of my friends who is a frequent listener of Mini Tech Scroll, you know who you are, is trying to bring back BeReal and has been telling me to start posting on the app again. Anyway, let's backtrack a little bit though. I'm assuming we all know what BeReal is, but for a brief reminder, if you somehow missed this giant viral moment of 2022, this was an app where users would get a notification one moment of the day and have to take a picture of themselves and their surroundings. I feel like the appeal of BeReal was, stepping away from the highlight reel that is typically associated with social media and just seeing what people are doing on their day-to-day. While this was refreshing, I do think people got bored of this quite quickly. When doing research for this episode, I actually went back to reporting at the time to see what people were saying about BeReal to kind of gauge how viral it actually was. And as reported by Laurie Clark for The Guardian, quote, currently the #1 social networking app in the Apple App Store in the US, BeReal is growing rapidly. The vast majority of its lifetime 28 million downloads happened this year, according to the Business of Apps. Its popularity is radiating out beyond the college students that first jumped on board, thanks in part to an ambassador program and payments for signing up. Obviously, there has been many downloads since then. I have seen reports of 100 million plus downloads, but nevertheless, the appeal and demand for BeReal has definitely tapered, but BeReal is reportedly hoping to change that. Speaking to Business Insider, BeReal's managing director, Ben Moore, said the app is adding new features and ramping up marketing to build momentum. As Moore told the publication, quote, we have people that are committed to building the next big thing with BeReal. We can make something that really answers the demands of Gen Z, who are sick and tired of the filters, of the lenses, of the social pressure of posting something that's not going to get them the level of views and likes they would want. So how BeReal is planning on doing this is multifaceted. First, they are planning on investing more in advertising, which would involve maybe leaning into college ambassadors and sponsoring events that might require guests to download the app to gain entry. This is definitely an extension of what they were doing when the app kind of first became popular, because university students were definitely a major group using the app. Anyway, next they are adding new features like Nearby, which lets people discover other users local to them. And even though I don't really use BeReal anymore, who knows? Maybe I'll pick it back up. I'm not sure if this is something I would have wanted from the app, because I feel like it was more about just seeing your close-knit circle of friends and what they were doing. And also, the BeReal could go off at 6 a.m. and I am not my best person at 6 a.m. So do I want random people to see me at 6 a.m.? Not necessarily. Aside from that though, BeReal has also introduced ads, which is definitely helpful for them on the commercial side of the business, because there was a lot of questions at BeReal's peak how they were going to effectively monetize. To kind of conclude this story, I am really not sure if BeReal can ever come back to the way that it was, just because it was so viral, so its popularity and use was kind of skewed. And even though it was kind of gimmicky, I can see a world where BeReal is continued to be used maybe by smaller groups of people, like I said. It is important to prioritize real life, even though, like I said, people did get bored of it pretty quick. But who knows, if Snapchat has managed to make it all these years, there might be a place for BeReal. Anyway, I think that is everything from me today. I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode, and Lauren will speak to you tomorrow. Thanks, bye.